Good afternoon. Today is bum day, and I have to say, I'm a pretty big fan of bum day. Getting able to come to work in bummy clothes is often quite fun. Makes Monday a little more bearable, right? All right, so today we're going to talk about square roots. And as you can see here, we're talking about, square roots, not plant roots. Funny play on words. All right. So we have perfect squares, just for a quick review, right? A perfect square is where if you have the square of a number, which is, 1 times 1, the square root is 1. 2 times 2 is 4, so the square root of 4 is 2, right? 3 times 3 is 9, so the square root of 9 is 3. So these are called perfect squares. A perfect square is when you get a nice whole number as your answer. So you could probably guess 1 times 1 was 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9. Therefore, this one would be 16, and the square root of 16 is 4, because the square root of 4 is 16. And then this would be 25, the square root of 5 is 5, and so on. So those are perfect squares. They have nice answers. If you did the square root of 30, pull up our calculator. So if I look at my calculator here, hello calculator, turn on calculator, oh for goodness sakes. So if we do the square root of 30, I have to do it that way, we get 5.772 something or other. So this huge number times itself is 30. So that's not a perfect square. You can still square root it, it's just not perfect. All right, so we have perfect squares, right? So then, when we're doing these, your answers always should be plus or minus that number, right? Because if you think about it, the square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. Because I can have 2 times 2 gives me 4, or negative 2 times negative 2 equals 4. So when you do square roots, your answer should be positive or negative 2, right? So if I have 16 here, the square root is positive 4 or negative 4, because both those times themselves equals 16. So all your answers are always going to have plus or minus in front of them, okay? Because it could be either one. All right, so then when we get to here, we think about, a lot of time we don't think about what that square root means. And we're really talking about the area of a square. So if we look at this particular problem here, this square I can say is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units long, right? So it's a 7 by 7, or the area is 49, right? And then if you do the square root of 49, that tells you one of the sides, 7 times 7. So the reason why we have the square root is because we're really just talking about the area of a square here, okay? Here's another example. Even though these are negative, we're just talking about a specific area. So when I do this type of square, I would still say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That it's 9 by 9 with an area of 81, right? I wouldn't say this is negative 9 and negative 9. Well, actually I could, right? What's negative 9 times negative 9? 81, right? So that's that plus or minus again. So the square root of 81 is plus or minus 9. The length can be positive 9 or negative 9, and I'll still get an area of 81. Huh. Applied my own rule. Okay? All right. So again, looking at this, I know the area is 49. So if I wanted to find the length, I would just do the square root, and that would give me 7 by 7, right? And then the same thing with these other two. So the square root of 121 is 11 by 11. Do you know what the square root of 225 is? See if you can figure it out. See how good you are at those. All right, so looking at these types of things, we want to look at negatives. You can have a negative out in front of the answer, right? So the square root of 1 is 1, and then this means to apply the negative afterwards, okay? So then I could say it's negative 1, right? Or the square root of 100 is negative 10, right? But I cannot put it inside. If you go on your calculators and you do try negative 121, you would get, actually I want you to do that. Go on your calculators, you probably can't read that. And I want you to find out what the square root of negative 121 is. I want you to write what happens and then tell me why you think you get that, why that happens. So there's a little piece to your homework. Find out the square root of negative 21. We'll talk about it in 121. We'll talk about it in class tomorrow. What does the calculator give you and why do you think it gives you that? Okay. All right. So square roots also, when you have a fraction, you treat them as, that would be the square root of 25 over the square root of 4. So that would just be 5 over 2. Okay? So same thing here. You treat that as the square root of 81 over the square root of 9. So that would give you 9 over 3. Okay? This one would not be a nice answer. This one, if we look at that, we would have the square root of 24 over the square root of 4. 24 is not a perfect square. So for right now, I would leave it like this. And then we're going to talk about how you do the square roots of things that aren't perfect squares. Okay? So if I look at the square root of 24, I want to do sort of like what we used to do with prime factorizations. I want to think about what perfect square is a factor of this. And that would be the square root of 4 times the square root of 6. 4 is a perfect square. So I know the square root of 4 is 2. So therefore my answer would be 2 times the square root of 6. Okay? So let's look at another one. Let's say I had to find the square root of, I don't know, let's say 64. So I would think about, well, what are the factors of 64? Do a little prime factorization. I know 4 has got to work, right? So we have the square root of 4, and then 4 times 16 is that number. Actually, that was a perfect square, wasn't it? Because this gives you 2 times 4, which give you 8, right? So the answer here is 8. That was a silly example because that was already a perfect square. All right, let's try another one. How about the square root of 72? So I know 9 is a factor, and that's a perfect square, times 8. So I know the square root of 9 is 3. Here, I know the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. 4 times 2 is 8. So I know the square root of 4 is 2, and then this is not a perfect square. So I have this whole number, and I have this whole number, so I get 6 times the square root of 2 as my answer. Okay, so basically you're breaking it down into prime factorization, but you're looking for perfect squares as factors. Okay, so I want you guys to try this one on your own. So I want you to simplify that. What is the square root of 84? Or 48? That says 48, right? 48. Oh, need some more coffee, my goodness. All right, so I want you to do like we did here. Start with that. Figure out 2 things that multiply to 48 and see if you can figure out how to simplify that into a whole number and a square root. And we'll talk about it some more tomorrow. Have a great evening.